Folks, welcome to an all new episode of So Bad It's Good with Ryan Bailey. This is your pal Ryan, and this is your Saturday episode. We're doing a Real Housewives of Orange County episode 6 recap. Plus, we're going to throw in some Watch What Happens Live with Tamra and some other statements Tamra has made this week. We'll go all around the world, and I just posted something on Instagram, and I'm getting a lot of comments back. So I'm going to read some of those and go through those as well, because there's just to start off the show, there's one thing that is still not sitting well with me at all about last night's episode, and that is the threat. It really does feel like a threat from Alexis or Lexi, the fun one, to release the tapes, to release the footage, the John Jansen cut of Shannon Bedore the night that she got into that accident. Now, there was some clarification from Tamra on the virtual reality pod. The Page Six guys, Evan Reel and Danny Kashmir, who I both love, talked to Tamra, and she said it's ring camera footage that John has from his house, from outside and inside the house. And also threatened it just not with just that night, but also throughout their relationship. So I understand ring cameras are there to protect people and break-ins and all of that stuff. But when you start threatening actual real life situations, it gets into some really gray area, for me that makes me feel icky. And also that this is not what the show should be highlighting or encouraging. So it makes me curious, because production had to have imagined how we would react to that. And I keep saying this again and again. I've said this since episode 1, I think, of this season, is Alexis or Lexi, for her to come on and her only storyline is John flippin' Jansen is so unfair to Alexis. Like, Alexis is a suicide bomber at this point. She's in there to literally have another foil at Shannon, and all it's doing is making Shannon more powerful, and she's not even trying to be. It's weird, and I wonder if she's even frustrated about it, because I know she has actual other things that have gone on in her life in these past couple of years that we could be talking about it, but all we're talking about is John Jansen's junk. John Jansen's junk. That's alliteration right there, folks. So it's very frustrating to watch, because always these shows get to a point where you feel like they've crossed a line, but the thing is, year after year, that line keeps getting further and further pushed back. You're like, okay, I'm because we get so desensitized by the insanity of this. I mean, housewives have always thrived with a little bit of toxicity. We have to admit that to ourselves. We have to be, and by the way, we've also enjoyed the toxicity at times. But I think what it is, it ends up these pressure cooker situations where sometimes when you're getting like stomped on like a narc at a biker rally, it feels so gross. And you see it again and again. When this move happens on housewives or reality shows, all it does is make the person that everybody is going against that much stronger. Like, you do so much of the heavy lifting for that other character. I mean, Shannon at this point is coming off like a martyr, and she's not even trying to. You almost have to root for Shannon, even if you don't like Shannon. And I personally love Shannon. But there's so many conversations to be had, because, I talked about this on last week's episode too, is that we're all built differently, right? Our makeup is very different in how we all exist as human beings on this earth. We all can't be this fierce warrior that believes so much in themselves like Tamra, even though I know Tamra has a boatload of insecurity about herself. But she presents a fighter. She presents somebody that's like, I'm in charge, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But Shannon has never presented that. And, Tamra and some of the audience keeps throwing back that Shannon has this victim mentality. Yes, we've seen that through the years, but that's how that's her wiring in her brain. And this season, of all seasons, she's actually not coming off like a victim, and she would have every reason in the book to be a victim this season. I think we're all kind of in astonishment about how much can Shannon Bedore withstand? And so far, she's held up pretty decently. We'll see what the rest of the season brings, but this is episode 6, and I can't believe she's still on the show. Like, I can't believe she's still, like, I love that Tamra's argument is that Shannon needs rehab. Your actual argument that you would have gotten more mileage out of, Tamra, is if you said Shannon should have taken a pause. That's the actual caring friend way to say the things that I think you're trying to say. But the way you're saying it just makes you look like a vindictive weirdo. It does. There is no sort of deafness. There is no sort of delicacy, for somebody that you've claimed to once been their friend. This is not how you treat friends. Even friends you're on the outs with, you do not go as hard and as often in that hardness as you do with Shannon. There's just, I mean, it throws you completely out of a reliable narrator category. And across the board, if Tamra would look at her own behavior, I think she would be, if Tamra judged her own behavior like she judges other housewives' behaviors on other franchises on her hit podcast, I think she would be very against some of the moves that she's making. And I say this now every fucking week. Sorry to use the language, folks. Every week that Tamra thinks she's in a competition reality series and Shannon thinks this is a documentary about her life, And you can tell in both how they present that this, like Tamra has an agenda. Like I always, every scene that Tamra's in, I come like I leave that scene usually going, oh, well, she had an agenda. She was trying to push this narrative. So in some ways, she's a producer's wet dream, I would imagine, because she's pushing the story along. And that's why I keep saying too, because I don't want to get my words twisted, is that Tamra is a necessary character. She's a necessary evil. Now, the thing that you got to watch out for, though, is her relishing in that of like, I'm doing this for the sake of the show. Like, no, you can help the show and also have a little bit of class and tact about you, which I feel like Tamra has thrown completely out the window. I mean, she's one of those like just it's not delicate. She's just wanting to break things. And you don't want these housewives starting to talk about themselves like they're football players. Like, oh, I made this move or I made that move. You want them to be acting the reality of their situation. And if Tamra truly thinks the reality of this situation with her friendship with Shannon is to publicly embarrass her week after week after week on this show, I just don't know in any kind of definition of friendship where that is. Because that's even way beyond tough love. Because you never sense there's a love element of that, which then just leads me to believe that Tamra is very hurt in some way. Like there's a personal element to this where she's hurt. And also, it could just be like a lot of people in life where she just got sick of Shannon's shit. Like, don't blame it on all this alcohol shit and all that. You just don't want to deal with Shannon. You are tired of dealing with Shannon. And I feel like she's not being honest with herself or the audience because it can sometimes just be that simple. And once again, I'm not saying that Shannon does not have problems. Obviously, we see her admit these problems. But just because Tamra thinks it should be going one way doesn't mean that's the way it should go. Tamra has made plenty of mistakes in her own life and on this show, which I'm not going to point out because I think that's probably kicking somebody too much. That she should realize. And I don't know, like Tamara is one of those kind of bullheaded, stubborn people that will never admit any kind of wrongdoing because I think she's kind of confused that with admitting defeat. And in these situations, it's not about winning or losing. It's not about being defeated and it's not about winning something. You're just trying to show these elements of life. It's not a competition reality series. So for her to then do a press tour and dine out on Shannon's name is kind of wild. And it's interesting because there are certain characters where you watch them go through something. And so say if they're on Watch What Happens Live or any kind of podcast or show, they're talking about what they went through. When Tamra's on Watch What Happens Live or any podcast or talk show, she's talking about other people. She's talking about Shannon. It's always about somebody else and not about her. And I understand how this whole business, or as I get further into it, how this business works. And I know you can't ask certain things. And, sometimes, man, I would love for Andy to push back sometimes and go, I mean, I know Andy can never do that, but like at a certain point, he even knows that this isn't considered good friendship, but he can't say that. He's got to keep it copacetic with everybody. And also, I think there's probably a bit of glee, and because in essence, there is an element where this makes it a highly viewable show. that that I sit here and go, oh, I can't wait to talk about this because I got a lot of thoughts. So I even argue with myself in my own head because I'm crazy about what does this all mean? Because we're participating, it's getting our anger up. It's like Vanderpump Rules or The Valley where you're like, man, I want to argue about this. I want to talk about this. And that's sometimes what these shows should do. It shouldn't be easily digestible, like, it shouldn't just like toilet paper where, oh, okay, it's over, on to the next roll. And a lot of times with reality TV, we see so much of it. Netflix is a prime example when they release all their episodes at once and you just burn through a series in a weekend and you forget about it by the next week. And so it's good sometimes to have something to talk about, some meat on the bone that we can discuss and kind of maybe relate it with our own lives, or talk about the tragedy that has happened to us or the happiness that have happened to us through the years. I don't know. So I'm going to be, as I go through all of this, I'll be trying to figure this out for myself. But I just go by my initial first instinct where it feels really icky. It feels really icky. And like I said at the beginning, we've seen it time and time again on these shows where I'm sure Shannon felt really ganged up on at times, and I'm glad she's finding little relationships to have still within this season. But I'm sure it felt like a takedown season in a lot of ways for Shannon, but she felt that in the moment. And her scene mates or her friends, her other Real Housewives, probably thought, man, like when with a housewife with a little piece of meat on the bone, it's like Lisa Rinna when she would just attack. And she was like, oh, I got a storyline now. I can hop on this storyline. So they're all excited because it gives us it gives them a scene to do, right? It makes a scene that they're scheduled for. It gives it life. But when we watch it, we have a whole different experience. What these ladies potentially felt in that moment, the audience sees it and we go, holy moly, oh my God, poor Shannon. And that's what I'm saying. It makes Shannon we're more empathetic towards her. We see her side more. So you can lose the scene, but win the audience. I've always said that. You can lose the scene, but win the audience. Like even on The Valley, Janet made a rookie mistake, and I understand why, because she was heavily pregnant, of not inviting Dodie to Big Bear, right? Or I guess Zach as well. And I understood it from Janet's perspective, right? In reality, you wouldn't want that there. But on reality TV, you just made Dodie more powerful in some ways. Because when you exclude people in life, you feel bad for the underdog sometimes, even if the person doing it has strong reasoning behind it. It's interesting. The rules of reality television are sometimes similar to the rules in life and sometimes very different, but it's all about what you make the audience feel. Like you guys out there watching or listening to this right now, these shows are about us as much as they are about anybody that we watch, because it's how we process that information. We then go onto our second screen technology. I go onto my stupid podcast. I yell about it. I laugh about it. We text our friends about it. We're on group threads. We're making memes. We keep that conversation going. It starts with them, and then we carry that message and inject our own personal experiences into it. And that's what can make reality television really, really exciting, right? When they got meat on the bone, we got meat on the bone. And we can argue and we can disagree with each other. And hopefully at some point we can come together and have some mutual respect for each other. Who knows? That's in the eye of the beholder. So that's my opening salvo. And speaking of that, though, I do want to mention I had Jacques Peterson from the Unpopular podcast back on the show after like a 2-year hiatus. I went back and looked. He had been on the show, I think he's been on the show 4 times now through the years. And I always have a great conversation with Jacques. And I said at the beginning, I've said every time he's on, I disagree with a lot of things. A lot of his takes I disagree with, but I still really enjoy the conversation. I enjoy the back and forth. But I do, and I've texted with Jacques about this, and I really like Jacques, but I know, especially his take on Garcelle and the Dorit thing really upset some people. And I want to give credence to that. I want to say I've paid attention to that. And I also want to say, hey, I'm so happy he came on, and I really appreciated that back and forth. And there were a lot of places where we agreed. We did not agree on Garcelle, and I wanted to read one comment from a YouTube comment that I found interesting. And I thought this person kind of wrote it out brilliantly. They write, so disappointed in Jacques' comments about Garcelle. What exactly does he mean by the race card? He is not black and will never understand how it is to navigate the world as a black person. We know when we are being mistreated or discriminated against purely because of race, no matter how subtle it is. I am sure Jacques has experienced discrimination and microaggression purely because of his sexuality. I am sure he has come away from a situation having experienced something that he knew wasn't right and couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he knew that he was treated differently because of his sexuality. This is what Garcelle experienced. And I thought that was kind of really brilliantly put. And, it made a lot of sense to me. And I already am a fan of Garcelle. So it was easy to push back. But I think these conversations are important to have. It's important to like get your real feelings out. And maybe I can explain why that's not how I view this situation at all. I mean, I don't think Garcelle wants to go in trying to school everybody, but if a scene partner is saying ignorant things again and again and again, it's got, by the way, like I said yesterday, it's got to be probably really a bummer for Garcelle to constantly have to school people. That's a burden and a responsibility that she probably doesn't want to have. And also, in saying all of this, it's like me as a white dude, I don't have like I'm able to listen, and I've got to say I've learned a lot from these shows. I can constantly learn a lot from these shows, and I've been able to kind of put a magnifying glass on my own behavior or my own microaggressions or my own, like these are things that it's and sometimes I've said, hey, can these shows withstand? Is there enough of a foundation that it can withstand or even hold these big conversations? Because you see sometimes Dorit in those situations, she seems wildly unprepared, and it keeps happening again and again and again. But is that a microcosm or holding a mirror up to actual society where this is actually going on there? And I don't feel threatened by it. I mean, I feel bummed out if anybody ever gets a bad feeling from listening to the show. And once again, I want to say I really appreciate Jock coming on and sharing his opinions, for better or worse. These are his opinions, and those conversations I think are really important. But I wanted to acknowledge that and also say I still had a really good time talking to him. And I think it's good to know that there are people out there that don't see it your way, the right way. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Jacques. But I wanted to say that at the top, and I did get a lot of messages about it, and thank you to everybody that wrote in. And it's one of those things that you navigate as you go along. And listen, I feel like I'm really smart in some things, and I'm really dumb in a lot of other things. And I've always tried to come from a place of not being not feeling upset about learning somebody else's point of view. And I think in today's society, it's really hard because you go on any sort of social media. Like I woke up today and I was on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck we're calling it. And it's like rage baiting everything. Like it's like, you're getting upset so early in the morning. And then you have to go, well, that's what this is designed to do. And sometimes reality shows are designed to get you upset. And you have to have enough sense of self or enough enough sense where you can't be defensive about learning. You can't be defensive. You can be defensive in trying to make a point, but you can't completely turn it off. Like, there's only so many people. I don't know. I don't want to get too in the weeds with this, but it's one of those things. And it's interesting. I've always said this, that, the world at large, pop culture is a microcosm for like the world at large. And when things start getting really heated in the world or even in America, you see also that reflects in pop culture. Pop culture gets a little meaner. Or even me, I'm taking out some of my aggression on Real Housewives of Orange County right now. And maybe that's in a way me trying to cope with the craziness of the world. I mean, not just obviously here, but everywhere. I mean, you see like the Blake Lively conversation, which I found fascinating because as we always say, two things can be true at once. It's not, there is room for multiple things to be happening. I mean, Blake Lively could be right in this "it ends with us" situation with Justin Baldoni, but she also could have had really bad behavior in certain interviews years prior because she's a quote unquote artist. And, we can laugh about that. But, I will say when men call themselves artists, we don't nearly laugh as loud or as much. But it is interesting because once this happens, you just get this wave of hate. Like I would think Blake Lively is potentially one of the hated people in America right now. And I'm like, holy shit. And also, I mean, you guys know from listening to me so much, I'm a fucking idiot. I can't imagine being able to say the right thing all the time. I can't imagine being able to, like, Blake Lively, even if she thinks she's a genius, she's obviously not. Who knows? Like, it's such an unnatural situation to go on and sell your wares, to sell your movie or sell your podcast. And I always hate promoting myself. I feel fucking gross. And I can't imagine what it's got to be like to answer those questions again and again and to disassociate probably to a great degree. And yeah, it is her responsibility to probably be better in some of those situations. But what we do now is we don't agree with something that is still a big mystery around in terms of this "It Ends With Us" movie. But then to hedge our bets, just in case Blake really is a horrible person, everybody's already done the work and combed through 20 years of interviews, of little missteps, of her relationship. And I'm like, wow, it really gets to a point of like, holy shit. Like people not only dislike her for this, but they also want to destroy her. And I feel like that relates with Housewives. It relates to everything pop culture right now. I mean, you guys, do you get this? Like, do you think, do you understand what I'm saying? Or am I off base? I mean, cause yeah, listen, I've been wrong plenty of times, but I think sometimes it's not even the thing, like, cause we don't know what happened on this movie. We don't know what Justin did or what Blake did. It's all a bunch of like rumor and speculation and sources that won't go public. Um, and we don't know, but we've already leapt 5 steps ahead into let's destroy this person. And I understand that there's a lot of things that are not to like about Blake Lively. And I understand there's a lot of things to not like about Ryan Reynolds. But I don't know. It almost seems like a gladiator arena thing where you watch somebody just get torn to shreds. And I'm like, oh, is part of that warranted, which it might be, or is part of that just a reaction off of extreme success? And I don't know. Anyway, sorry. As always, I get off on a rant, and then like I said, this is me trying to figure things out as much as it is trying to talk about these shows. I'm working things out in my head as I go along, and that's okay. We're doing it together as a family. This is a safe space. Okay, so let's get into let's get into the actual recap of Orange County, and then we'll go through comments. We'll go through Watch What Happens Live. This is a supersized one. It probably will be. So hold on to your coal mining asses. We're gonna get into this. And thank you for being here with me today or tonight or tomorrow or whenever you're listening to this. I hope you're having a fantastic flipping weekend. I hope you're eating good, drinking good, hanging out with people. Tell people you love them. I will say that. That's one of those things I'm trying to be better about. And I always forget. It's one of those things, and I feel it for people, but I don't say it a lot. So always say it because you just never know. And you never know what people are going through. And that's why I'm going to even try to give Tamra some grace throughout this and try to look beyond what I'm seeing and speculate about maybe what else is going on. And hopefully we can all do that to a sense, but also kind of make fun of her. Hey, oh, also, this is not OC related, but I mean, I hope everybody's doing okay out there because I woke up at 5:30 for a bit this morning and couldn't go back to sleep for like an hour. And I hit the Daily Mail as I usually do, the paper of note, and I was hit with some just devastating news, you guys. And that is that Chris Martin, the lead singer of Coldplay, and fiance Dakota Johnson, the star of Madam Web, split. The couple call off engagement after drifting apart and accept that the 7-year relationship is over. And I was like, oh my God, how do I get back to sleep at this point? I was a wreck. Tears, emotions, so many things, thinking about the beautiful 7 years that have come before this. And I did go back to sleep. And then I woke up and I went to TMZ, the other paper of note, and it says Dakota Johnson, Chris Martin, we're still together. 3 exclamation points. And life comes at you pretty fast, folks. So I mean, I don't know who to believe. I don't know. I mean, it's really hard. I want to go into the weekend thinking they're still together, but who knows? Oh my God. It's so funny how pop culture, the outlets that cover it, like Daily Mail, TMZ, Perez Hilton, Us Weekly, People Magazine, all of these things, they're so hungry for some sort of storyline, some sort of like breaking news. And a lot of the times they get it wrong. So you'll see conflicting reports from website to website, and you have this it's like a whiplash effect that you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And they're usually going like by the thinnest of sources, where they're just going on a hunch, or like, oh my God, Dakota Johnson got mad because Chris Martin farted at a restaurant last night and left angry, and now they split up. They probably have split up. I don't care, but it is just funny that the back and forth. You read one thing here, one thing there. How are we supposed to know the truth? And then also, do we even care? Do we care? Have they overestimated how much we care about Chris Martin and Dakota Johnson? I like the first 2 Coldplay albums, and Dakota Johnson, I've liked some of her stuff. The acting, 50 Shades of Grey, top-notch work. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out. Sorry if I ruined your weekend with potentially telling you guys that they broke up, but I just felt like I needed to get it off my chest. Okay.